When we left Akira in Part 1, there was literally blood on the streets. Religious fanatics, terrorist attacks, gang violence. And if you were wondering what the government of Neo-Tokyo was doing about it, well, the answer is not much.
Terrorist activities carried out by anti-government elements have skyrocketed this month. The Army, riot squad, and even the traffic police have been fully mobilized. The overtime costs alone have used up the public safety budget.
And if you were looking to find somewhere in the world someone you could look at and go, that's a good person, you ain't finding it here.
No.
You've got all sorts of people arguing, and some people want to be more draconian with the police, and some people need to save money, and some people want, but they all are, you know, scummy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all yelling at the colonel who wants a lot more, tons and tons more money to deal with the Akira issue. And they're like, you've already had too much money already.
And they don't believe in it. Some of them don't even believe in it.
No.
Yeah, they're using it to fleece this place.
Well, and, you know, certainly the argument between how much money do we need to give to the military to protect ourselves from threats that the military believe are out there, that is a natural political argument to have.
Absolutely.
I'm always reminded when I think about this stuff, it's the world's dumbest joke, and I'm going to tell it anyway, and maybe I will take it out. But my dad, we had at the first house when I was a really little kid, 4 or 5 years old, there was a little fence with a little gate, and it was in front of where the lawn was. And my dad one day decided to take it out, and so he took out all the fence, but he left the gate. He didn't finish the whole thing. So there was a freestanding gate in there, and then my dad was busy, and he was working all the time. So it stayed there for a few months. And I went to him at 4 years old and said, Dad, what is that gate for? My dad said, it's to keep the elephants out. And I said, but Dad, there aren't any elephants. And he said, see?
Works.
How funny.
Totally works.
And the thing is that, you know, the military can always say that.
Yes.
Always.
You know,
Right.
Well, we have to protect ourselves from the blank, and we're not being attacked by them, so it must be working.
Right.
And of course, sometimes there are elephants. In fact, frequently there are. And the elephant in the room for this film is Akira.
Yeah.
One
Yes.
other thing we should say is that one of the dudes at this council is Mr. Meizu.
Oh, yes.
And the reveal of, because they don't throw a lot of light on it. They're just kind of panning by.
He's
and
just
like,
there.
Wait, didn't I see that?
Uh-huh.
Because it's not like he's not recognizable.
No.
And then we have another of these big booms. The power of the boom. That boom I used in rough cuts of so many films that I made, not just in film school, but later on.
Yeah.
I used it when we did Siren. I used it in all. I used it in the both shark documentaries that I cut. Like just because that particular, and then of course I had to replace it because I couldn't afford to use that particular sound.
Right.
But it's just man, those booms are like no other boom I know of in any other film. And we go in on this huge building, and there's Tetsuo in bed, grabbing his head. He reaches out and goes, I need some water.
Need water.
And the water slides into his hand. And I love little stuff like, because you're like, oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Well, and the way they stage it, too, is so brilliant because he's, like, not even looking. He has his hand on his face, and he's just reaching around for the glass of water, and
So
then,
he
like,
doesn't
summons
know
it.
that
Yeah.
the water moved.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what's so great
Yep.
about it. And
Well, this scene, rewatching it, I went, oh, I remember this one.
this is a freaky scene.
Yep.
The little bear on the bed,
Yep.
he doesn't
Yeah.
want the little teddy bear, throws it away.
Yep.
The glass rolls down off the bed, down to the
Doesn't break.
floor, doesn't break. And there's the bear and a couple other toys there. And we cut to our terrorist guys now dressed as service people who are doing the classic, oh, we're here to do the job,
Sneaking
whatever.
in through the sewers.
Yeah, Kaneda's with them.
Yeah.
And Tetsuo's in pain. He's breathing. He rolls it over and we hear, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. This is one of the weirdest pieces of film scoring.
Yes.
The voices are childlike.
Uh-huh.
It's repetitive. It is creepy.
Yeah, it's super creepy.
It is light.
Yep.
And a little tiny bear, smaller than the bear was before, crawls up on the bed. And then a little tiny rabbit and a little tiny car.
Yep.
And they're marching towards him in a very childlike, toy manner.
Yep.
And he reaches to grab them and he opens his hand.
And they're gone.
It reminds me of the scene in Blade Runner when Sebastian comes home and those
Yes.
little dolls
Yes.
are like greet him and stuff.
Home again,
Yep.
jiggity jig.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I really would like if we had Katashiro Otomo here. I would love to ask about Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Because my guess is he loves it.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say absolutely yes.
Yeah.
And after he opens his hand and nothing's there, we get that boom. And we look up, and that bear, now giant size, towering over him, is sort of assembling himself. And as it stands up, it shatters the ceiling, and there's white liquid, which always looks like pus to me. It's really vile and gross. And it reaches out with its hands, and his hand, it becomes a mouth filled with teeth. And it shatters the bed, and now the rabbit and the car are building themselves, and the music is, dong, 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 dong. And they're stumbling towards him, and he runs away, and the walls shatter, and the walls are now made of Lego. And the car is coming towards him, and its belly explodes, and it's milk. And he falls into a sea of milk. Again, all the childhood things are surrounding us. And he screams, and the window shatters, and as the window shatters, he steps on that glass.
Yep.
And then we hear
It's blood! I'm scared!
in the voices of these kids, which may or may not be in English or Japanese, depending on which version you're watching.
Yes.
And they start to fall apart. And who do we see? We're the bear and the car and the rabbit, but Takashi, Kyoko, and Masaru.
Yeah.
Masaru. And they pull slowly away. And we're back in the room, and it hasn't been shattered, but the window is still broken, and Tetsuo's foot is bloody. That scene, if we're going to talk about drug trippy, dream, surreal, crazy scenes, that is a really good one.
What are they trying to do there?
That was my next
kids,
question. It's
not
written
a
down
clue.
right here.
Yeah, they, they were just, testing the waters with their new psychic pal.
See, I think they're trying to scare him into submission. And I think they think if they get him early enough and scare him with these large, because this is a kid's mentality. If I make it big, then it'll scare.
Yeah.
But Tetsuo is past that age where that kind of approach would affect him. And so that's why later on when he laughs at them when they try to stuff, because that's the tactics they're trying to use to submit him, because they've said if we don't stop him, it's going to bring about the end of the world.
Okay, I have several questions about this. I'm not sure that their motivations track, and maybe this is part of why. Maybe this is a good time to bring this up. So I think you get to the end of this movie to some degree and go, huh? Like what? How am I supposed to feel? What was this supposed to mean? Is this good? Is this bad? What is this? And one of the things that happens again with my students all the time is they make a film that's pretty terrible, and it makes no sense. And I say, your movie makes no sense. And they go, no, it's supposed to be ambiguous. And I go,
oh, yeah, there's a difference between ambiguous and makes no sense, though.
well, and this is the thing is that part of, I think, to earn ambiguity, you have to earn ambiguity.
Yeah.
Right. And that part of what makes this movie works is that every moment is so stunningly and brilliantly and carefully created that the dude that's making it and all the people working with him did everything they were doing for a reason.
Yes.
So when something is ambiguous, you go, well, that was on purpose. Whereas if you just show a bunch of stuff and go, hey, it's ambiguous, well, you haven't earned it yet. Yeah.
Very different.
And I think that scene is so remarkable. I mean, it's unbelievably well filmed.
Yeah.
But when I look at us, I go, well, she, at the beginning, the dreamy Kyoko, said you have to stop him. So are they trying to stop him? But really what we seem to learn about Tetsuo is the more interactions he has with these people and the more high stressed he gets, the more he's going to use his power.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this seems like a terrible tactic.
Sure, but they don't know yet. And I think it's
Yeah.
their first attempt. And once they see this, and Tetsuo sees their weakness too with the blood and everything like that, this becomes, they overplayed their hand.
Here's the other question I have. How old are they?
The kids.
Yeah.
Mentally or physically?
That's the important question.
Right. I think they're mentally 12 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say even
Physically,
younger,
though,
maybe.
older. Yeah, maybe. But physically older.
Yes.
Because they are, if I understand what happens at the end, they are 31. They're 35 years
They're
old.
35.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
Because we see them at the end in flashbacks with Akira before the destruction of Tokyo in the first
Yes.
place. So that's why they look old. Is
Yeah.
they actually they could be 40 years old.
Yeah, true.
But then they have been kept trapped in this permanently childlike environment.
Great point. State of arrested development. You could argue that, yeah.
And so I go like, and there's also to some degree a sense that they are geniuses.
Yeah.
You know, they're not dumb.
No,
You
no.
know, but they are childlike.
Yes.
There's not a proclivity for violence on their end.
Yeah.
No.
Where there is for Tetsuo.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they've been living in a pampered life.
Yeah, and they,
right in a room.
and again, and as we say, it's exactly that. Of they were identified as children, and they were basically kept children.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, for all we know, they never knew any other life.
Right. Which is why when What's-His-Face is there with the man,
Right.
we don't know why that man ever took the kid either, like what that's all about. We never find out, I don't think, what he was doing. But that kid is so freaked out by everything he's seeing in the world. He has not been out of that room for God knows how long. So everything scares him. So logically with Tetsuo, who's been through a hard scrabble life, his reaction to having this power is completely different.
Yeah.
Well, and we can figure out a little bit of stuff because if we believe that the stuff we see at the end, where they're part of some scientific experiment and they're testing their mental powers and they're in part of a group thing, is true, which I think I would assume that it is true.
Yeah.
Is that so? In 1980, they're born in 83 or something like that,
It's 88.
and it's 88, and they've been doing this stuff, and then something goes wrong with the experiment, and Akira creates a singularity which destroys Tokyo. And they are somehow spirited away and protected. And now in the ruins of Tokyo, because they survived it.
Oh, yeah.
And in the ruins of Tokyo, we decide, well, we need to keep them around. And they've built this nursery and this infrastructure around them. And they also have the dissected pieces of Akira that we're going to see later that they've placed and it must have taken a while before they built the giant cryogenic whatever it is where the Olympics are, and that they are continuing to my gut is that they are continuing to study these kids and trying to learn about Akira, both to understand this power, because we've talked about this maybe as the next stage of human evolution or whatever, but also simultaneously to prevent what happened before from ever happening again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I think that's sort of what's been going on.
Yeah.
But we also have 3 kids plus Akira, and our numbers only go up to 28.
Yeah.
Right.
But the number they give to Tetsuo is he's going to be 41. Now, is that in the movie or is that just in the comic? It might just be in the comic.
I can't. They have a conversation in the movie, though, about how there's something about like, oh, number 28. No, he'll actually be XYZ number. And they're like, oh, wait, wasn't Akira 28? Yeah.
Right.
It's sort of like offhandedly mentioned, I think, in the movie, but I don't think they quite nail it down the way they do in the manga.
But the implication of this is there have been a bunch of other kids
Right.
that have had some powers like this.
Yeah.
And stuff happened to him. And also the implication is that Tetsuo, being a kid that developed this power so much older, is unusual.
Yeah.
And that's why he's having so much problem controlling it. And that's why as we fly down a hallway now and arrive at him, he is standing there, veins bulging in his forehead. We hear an alarm, and Tetsuo is out of the room. The door is broken. The guards come up to him. They say, "You're not supposed to be here." They lay their hands on him. His veins bulge. There is a music boom. And the camera from suddenly is way far away. And we see just a bloody explosion.
I love it. I love the way it's done because it's simple.
Oh, it's so
bloody,
good.
and they don't highlight it. It's just,
and you're just like, oh, dang.
And it's like all these bodies just disintegrate and fly away from him.
Yeah.
It is nasty.
It's like,
but I think that's the thing that this movie does so well is obviously it's incredibly violent, but none of it feels gratuitous. Like they rein it in enough that it's very disturbing and never crosses over to being kind of comedic, for lack of a better term.
No, disturbing is the right thing.
Yeah.
And because you're so far away from it.
Yeah.
It is really
It's
scary.
super freaky.
We're down with Kaneda and Ryu and our terrorist freedom fighters,
Terrorist
depending on
friends.
and they're hiding out in the sewers or something. The light is coming. They dive under the sewer water.
That scene where they dive under the sewer water is so gross to me. And Kaneda's complaining the entire time about how bad it smells, and he dives under the water, and a dead rat with maggots on it floats up right in front of him. Oh, it's so gross.
And then here come what I can only describe as the speeder bikes.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
And they come around the corner.
It's so true.
And the big waves that happen from the speeder bikes. And again, all of this is beautifully shot.
Yeah.
Kay opens fire with like a machine gun and scrapes along the wall, and the bike crashes. She loses the gun. And Kaneda, being a badass, runs up a wall, jumps off, lands on a speeder bike, and just takes it out. And I love the shot of it spinning in the water. It's really, really cool. Kaneda grabs Kay and pulls her onto the speeder bike. And they fly away, spinning, trying to get it under control.
Yep.
He starts to get the hang of it. And we hear a report about Tetsuo going to the baby room.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in a hallway, and they're firing gas at Tetsuo. And the hallway fills up with gas. We can't see him. Yep. And then he walks through the gas.
Yeah.
It pushes it away from him. And now the bandages are kind of floating off of him like a scarf that I think is reminiscent of the cape that he's going to have later on.
It's a Mumra action, too.
They fire another canister. Yeah, totally. Totally. They fire another canister at him. And I think this is why you have the shot of the cop firing the canister point blank range into the dude.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to fire one right at Tetsuo, and he's going to stop it.
Yeah. And
he screams. And the gas pushes away, but he doesn't just push the gas away. He pushes the walls away.
Yeah.
And the building starts to collapse, and he just wipes those soldiers out. And we hear that. Dun, 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 dun. And that mixed with the sound of the bells, and the soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah, this is one of the, it's just such a good score.
It really is. And we're in the nursery with the kids. And again, we hear the ba-dup, ba-dup, ba-dup.
Yeah.
And there's the bear in the car, and they're coming out to get Tetsuo. He's having none of it. He basically explodes them.
Stop it! Yeah, he knows their deal now.
Yeah, and he knocks all those kids back. Inside the tunnel, Kay is talking very strangely.
Yes.
Proceed straight ahead. You'll find a freight elevator just ahead.
Back in the nursery, Takashi and Masaru are banging on this glass kind of bed that Kyoko's in.
Yeah.
And the reason is because she's controlling Kay, and her energy is there to bring Kay and Kaneda up to the room. One of the things that's really interesting in the movie is the importance of Kay.
Yeah.
You know? And they don't do a lot of explaining about it.
No.
Particularly by the end.
Yes. Yeah, they basically just, because, they take control of her again later in the movie.
Yeah.
And they just basically have this conversation of, well, we don't have any choice but to use this girl to help us.
Yeah.
Well, but then there's also, I think, the implication that she is in fact one of them.
Yeah.
And that by messing with her in this way is they're awakening her.
Sure. No,
the way
absolutely.
Tetsuo gets awakened.
Yeah, because it's like otherwise Kaneda was the one driving the bike. Why wouldn't they have taken control of him?
Yeah.
He's kind of a dick.
Yeah, no,
I don't
totally.
like to control people that are kind of a dick. And I love, too, the three kids go, let's fight them all together. Maybe we take them all together. And I was thinking a lot about wizard battles in general are pretty cheesy. It's very rare that you see one that looks cool.
Yes.
The way that they do this is you see, again, using focus and art effects is that all the walls start to sort of vibrate and flex. And then Tetsuo fights them back and re-solidifies them. It is, again, a super cool metaphor for kind of a mental magic battle. Colonel's there, too. The room is totally falling apart. Tetsuo's head is killing him and he's collapsing. And they're trying to tell him, you're not mature.
You can't control this power.
Yeah, you can't do this.
What'd you say?
She said that big people like you should never use the power in the way that you are. And bad things will come of it.
And he lashes out. There's more destruction.
Because he doesn't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be told what to do again.
Yeah.
And he fights any attempt to control him
Yes.
ever since. Yeah.
Well, this is what's interesting is essentially the bad guy is Tetsuo.
Yeah.
I feel total sympathy for him pretty much throughout the entire movie, even when he's wiping people out.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that he should be killed.
Of course, but you're absolutely meant to have sympathy for him. They portray him as a character who's had every disadvantage in life, so you understand why he makes the decisions that he does.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's looking for answers.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I am in pain. Right. I'm lost.
Right.
I'm afraid.
Yes.
I need answers.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't trust these people that want to put me in a hospital. And I don't want them to, because he later says, like, I don't want to, you're going to make me one of them who's in your little nursery on like a chain. Like, I don't want that. Right. And the one thing that seems to be the answer is Akira. And he's asking, like, where is it? And of course, they're trying not to tell him, but he kind of got some mind reading stuff going on too.
He figures it out. Yeah, he can, like, because Kyoko, like, thinks it and he, like, reads her mind.
There's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Boom. You thought it. I saw it.
And the elevator opens and there's Kaneda and Kei on the speeder bike in the elevator.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we pull focus from the gun back to Kaneda. And at this moment, Kaneda's like, I'm here to rescue you.
Yeah.
Because that's his motivation right now.
Sure.
That's not what Tetsuo wants to hear.
No.
I don't want you to save me.
That's the last thing he wants to hear.
And he laughs and he just wipes him out.
You keep away!
And he says, I don't need you to come to the rescue ever again. From now on, I'll be saving you. And I love that Kaneda's response is, who the hell do you think you're talking to? Because he still sees him as a squirt.
Yeah. And again, I mean, we talked about this earlier on the podcast. Like, Roka, you pointed out, I mean, we all have this conversation.
Yeah.
Kaneda, for all that all this stuff is horrible in his life, he's always managed to come out on top.
Yeah.
And he still sees himself as that person.
Right. And this is the moment where Tetsuo reads Kyoko's mind and finds out, oh, it's under the Olympic Stadium.
Yeah.
And he kind of glows red and then he just shoots off because guess what? Tetsuo can fly.
Yeah. I can do this now?
Yeah.
I can do this now? Yeah.
It's funny. So I type my notes really fast, and frequently, you know, I'm just typing along with the movie, and autocorrect does weird things. So the note right here says, and I have no idea what this means, Thanksgiving with Tetsuo.
Yep. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Boy.
You get that tricky quick.
The colonel has been relieved of his command.
At 2400 hours today, the colonel is hereby stripped of his command and rank and shall be placed under arrest.
What the hell?
Kindly accompany us now.
Because that executive council, whoever voted, and said, sorry, you're out. We're not going to do it. And the colonel's response is, shoot him.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yep. Colonel's men, they stand by him.
And what's interesting, too, the guys that were with the guys who were there to arrest the colonel, they don't put up any fight. They're like, oh, no, we'll be with you, too. We're good with this. There's a POV shot going down the stairs, those same stairs we saw at the beginning, and we were back with the bartender, and there's Tetsuo.
Yeah.
And he asks for some drugs.
Yep.
And he gets a lot of drugs. Capsules.
Yep. And the way that interchange goes down, too, because you don't see how we got to the aftermath, which is what we end up seeing right afterwards. But he basically has this conversation with the bartender where he's like, you know, give me some capsules. And he's like, all right, like I only have a few and they were hard to come by, so they're really expensive. And they cut away.
Yeah.
This sense of, oh no, because you know what's going to happen.
Well, that's what's is like that cut is the you don't know what you're dealing with cut.
Yeah.
You know, and you do the same one again because Yamagata and Kai, I think the other guy, they came in and they find Tetsuo who's like sitting, the bar is wrecked.
Yeah.
The bartender is dead. Tetsuo is sitting on top of some high thing and they're going, what are you doing? Because they're going to treat Tetsuo like Tetsuo. And we're going, don't do that. And Yamagata talks some smack to him, and Tetsuo is going to kill Yamagata, which he does. Kaneda's in jail. We're talking about Akira and what does he mean, and maybe there's a lot of conversation about energy and evolution and monkeys and amoebas and
all the different ways to harness the power that is Akira and how humans are different because we don't just blindly consume everything that
and that we all have this power in us and we're all I almost always dislike scenes like this in movies.
Yeah.
Like when we get into deep metaphysical Like, because it's just like, and now it will explain some deep stuff to you.
Yes,
Seems too on the nose.
Too on the nose, yeah. Well, it's the same, like there's the scene in The Matrix where there's the really, really long sort of philosophical scene with Morpheus and Agent Smith, and it just goes on.
Oh, when he's interrogating.
When he's interrogating.
Yeah.
And Smith is just talking and talking and talking.
I hate your smell.
Yeah.
That part I like.
Yeah, he's good.
He's great. But this is not the Matrix podcast. We did that like 2 years ago.
We did.
Wow.
And anyway, so but the interesting thing that happens is that Kay is talking, and she's talking in sort of a strange way. And of course, it's really Kyoko who's talking. And at the end of this, the door is unlocked.
Yeah.
Because they know that Kaneda is the guy, that they really need to deal with some of this. And what is he asking Kay about in this moment? So what is going on with you and Ryu?
Yeah.
We're outside. There's like a delivery guy pulling up to someone, in the city as you do to deliver maybe some pizzas or something.
Sure.
And then a tank comes around the corner and helicopters are coming and bodies are coming out on stretchers. And our gang members see Kaneda.
Yeah.
And he finds out that Yamagata's dead and hears that Tetsuo did it. Kaneda talks about, he first met Tetsuo in the children's home and Tetsuo was asking about Kaneda's bike. That bike is really, really important. And we get his bike and he takes Yamagata's bike and he drives it into
the wall.
Into a wall, like a funeral pyre sort of thing. There's a huge explosion in the background. Kay screams and we see number 26, Takashi, walking on water towards them.
Right.
And Kay walks out on the water towards him.
Yep.
And Kaneda's like, no, don't go that way. And he runs out. And what's so great about it is you assume the water's shallow because they're. And then when Kaneda hits the water, he goes 5 feet deep.
Yep.
And he's yelling at them that she shouldn't go with him, and they walk away and they fade away.
Yeah.
The thing about Akira's power is it exists within everyone from the start.
Hey, who is that?
But when that power is awakened inside, it is important to wisely choose how to use it. Your friend has already made his choice. Tetsuo is our newest companion. He's our friend also. His actions are out of control, and for that we're partly to blame too.
So maybe that is that they made the wrong choice with the giant bear milk sea thing.
Totally.
That they do regret it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tetsuo's our friend, not yours! If someone's gonna kill him, it should be us!
So he has gone from I'm going to rescue Tetsuo to I'm going to kill him.
Yeah.
Right.
Back at the government palace or whatever, Meizu is burning some papers. He's shocked that the colonel has taken up arms. Essentially, there's a coup going on.
I underestimated him.
Tanks are coming through the gates. He's grabbing money and stuffing it into a briefcase. We see through an open door there's a bloody guy in a bathtub. And here comes Ryu, who's wounded and messed up.
Yeah.
And he's here to apologize. Meizu's like, it's not apology time. It's get the fuck out of here time. And he is also clutching his chest and turning red. And he shoots Ryu.
He accuses him of betraying him to the colonel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some kind of massive traffic jam with tanks. And there is Tetsuo. He crashes a helicopter and there's an explosion and he comes right out of the flames. And he wraps that red cape around himself.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, there's all sorts of graffiti everywhere. And I looked at some of what the translations were. And like the graffiti that's on, or the writing on the tank right now is Samurai Spirit. And Samurai Spirit opens fire at Tetsuo and he stops that shell.
Yep.
And then he destroys that tank. And the response is, it's Lord Akira. They think Tetsuo is Akira.
That he is Akira, yeah.
Yeah.
Someone tries to contradict the dude on top of the car, and he goes, "Shut up," and pushes him off.
Yeah.
Because when you're caught up in the fervor, you got to be right.
Well, and again, like normally you watch a movie, you want to go like, I am with the soldiers, or I am with the rebels, or I am with these religious people, or I'm with the. It's like there's nobody to be with.
Yeah.
They're all like not a comfortable place to be.
No.
Certainly Meizu, who is now stumbling through the alleyways
with his briefcase
of money,
full of money,
clutching his chest.
That's the other thing that I love about this movie is that, in terms of just this world, is they call all that stuff out. They call out like religious fanaticism and capitalism.
Yeah.
It's just like no, they pull no punches.
Well, and like right here we have the guy who is theoretically in charge of the terrorist organization while undercover with the government. What's he want? He just wanted the money.
Yeah. He just wanted to profit off of it. He saw an opportunity to profit.
Yeah.
And he said, okay.
It's Hans Gruber at the end.
Yeah.
Totally.
You're just a thief. I'm an
Exceptional thief.
Yes.
But this guy is no Hans Gruber. And he's now clutching his chest, trying to pop some pills, drops the briefcase. These, we'll call them bearer bonds because that's what they look like.
Yeah.
It's funny. 88s, Deer have Die Hard.
Yeah.
Are flying everywhere, and Ryu's right behind him, bloody.
Yeah.
And what's great is Meizu dies with his mouth filled with the pills, and Ryu walks right past him, kind of in a zone.
Yeah.
Walks into the street and falls to the ground, and the camera pulls back, and what do we see? We see that red paint that had written that Lord Akira was coming.
Yep.
Yeah. There's news reports about Akira, and Kairo sees the news reports. And she starts to walk off towards the bridge because she thinks maybe she'll find Tetsuo.
Yeah.
Because like you said, she is the one perfectly.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah. Good person.
Kaori doesn't give up on him.
Yeah.
We got the bike. We got the red jacket with the pill.
Yep.
They're like, oh, some big stuff is going to come.
And the sick gun that acquires.
The giant laser, whatever it is, gun, also red.
Battery powered, by the way.
Well, they care about the environment.
Yeah.
I think Kaneda's bike is electric.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, because it has that high pitched whine that sounds really cool.
Yep.
And Kai, the other gang member, is like, "What are you doing? Why are you going to face?" He wants you to come face. He's like, "Well,
okay,
yeah,
that's what I'm gonna do."
Yeah.
We're off at this bridge, and the tanks and the army are backing up, and the demonstrators and religious fanatics are following Tetsuo because they think he's their savior. He's not their savior.
Nah.
This is not going to go well at all. They open fire at Tetsuo with the lasers, which is what Kaneda is going to get in a little while. And they're just taking out rioters. They focus their beams on Tetsuo, who stops them, and he lifts up like a section of the bridge to protect himself, and then the whole bridge starts collapsing. And there is a lot of death.
Including the religious fanatics.
Yeah.
Save me!
Yeah. And it's brutal, too. Brutal the way it happens. And the colonel's on the helicopter looking down at all this. The doctor is tracking all this, and we're getting very close to the Olympic construction site. We're at the Olympics. We hear big explosions, and way in the distance, we see Tetsuo walking towards them. Yeah. And all the army guys are going, stop, stop. And the doctor is looking at that spinning CG power thing, and it's growing and it's spinning. And it has a sound too. It has those bells, and that's Akira. That's his musical theme.
Yep.
And we're inside, and Tetsuo's on that giant diagonal elevator going down, and he's kneeling. He's grabbing his head. The big doors open. Tetsuo walks through. More doors open. More frozen stuff. More opening bolts and locks and gas and ice. And there we're at the compartment, and standing on the top of the compartment is a figure.
Yeah.
And at first I go, is that Akira?
Yeah.
No, it's Kay.
You shouldn't use your power in this way, for it is not correct.
What's that?
Because in the end, you won't be able to control it, and it will control you.
It's the kids talking. You're those brats, right?
Supported by the powers of the Espers, they're going to have a very, very cool battle. And Kaneda is now riding up through the wreckage, past the dead bodies. We see explosions at the Olympic area. Then this whole installation, this whole complex around the Akira containment thing starts to collapse. And what's so cool is the giant pipes that I'm sure are spewing, liquid hydrogen or whatever into the thing.
Yeah.
They start spinning around. They look like giant tentacles, It's so cool looking. And we see the name Akira on the door, and the colonel is watching, and the doctor is studying the readouts, and the tentacles are going crazy. And Kay is face to face with Tetsuo on top. And then she disappears. Mm-hmm. And then she is coming down from above, and Tetsuo defends against her, and the shocks go around the containment thing, and we're going, oh shit, because this thing is going to open up.
It's going to, yeah.
And although we have no idea what actually is going to happen, you can't possibly imagine it's going to be good.
Ugh.
Right.
And it gets totally destroyed. And it also lifts up somehow until it's literally at the center of the stadium. I mean, we're in the middle of the Coliseum now. And Kay has been stunned, and she's in like a glowing crater in the ground.
Yeah.
And Tetsuo approaches what's now just a tiny little ball. And Akira is written on it. And he yells, and it just blasts it apart. And what is inside? Bunch of jars.
Yeah.
With a bunch of weird body parts. And I can remember seeing this the first time and going, that's it?
That's it?
What is it? What? Huh?
Yeah, I think that the first time watching it, I probably had a similar reaction, but with more context watching it later on in life.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very different reaction I think you have, because Akira is such a, what is Akira?
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't really know. And then they open up the storage container and it's just all these components, internal organs of what was once a little boy.
That's a good point. Yeah, a little boy.
But we know now, but when you get into it and you know, oh, wait, Akira was a person.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, shit.
Well, and that they were so, and the Colonel explains, they basically were so terrified that even though there was nothing left of Akira except these little tiny body parts, that they split them into these jars, stuck them into a hole, froze it to absolute zero, covered it with a giant complex, and has been spending half the money of Japan, you know, just to keep this thing frozen. And Tetsuo picks up a jar and looks at Akira's cranial nerve. And Tetsuo just bursts out laughing. And the Colonel's like, okay, you've seen him. Now why don't you come with us? And we could get you some drugs and we'll put you back in the hospital. And he blasts them. And the Colonel goes, okay, contact our defense system and we're going to call up to Seoul.
Oh, yeah.
And
you're like, what is Seoul?
Yeah. Well, and this is, again, we talked about it so many times on the show. It's like, good movies are mysteries.
Yeah.
Is that you introduce an idea and then you have your audience going, ooh, what is that?
Yes, then you get to see it and figure it out along with the characters that don't know what it is.
Exactly.
What is soul in Japanese?
Soul?
Yeah, because soul in Spanish is sun.
It's sun. I'm sure.
So I wonder if that's.
I guarantee you it's a reference to that.
There is a mix of, because they use Roman letters several times throughout the film, because Akira is not written in kanji, it's written in Roman letters.
Yep.
Kaneda is at the bridge. He rides down through the wreckage, makes his way through some crowds. Tetsuo's kind of looking at stuff. We hear gongs. All the jars are laid out before him. And there, Kaneda is walking up the hill, and he's gotten that big laser gun. And there is a shot that classic hero tilt up from the feet to him.
Tetsuo, you had me worried again. I figured you'd be standing here sobbing like a little baby.
Kaneda, you've always been a pain in the ass, you know. You've been telling me what to do since we were kids.
Tetsuo says, you had me worried. I figured you'd be sobbing like a little baby. Oh, no.
Kaneda says that to Tetsuo.
Kaneda says, you had me worried. I figured you'd be sobbing like a little baby. And he says, Kaneda, you've always been a pain in the ass. You've been telling me what to do since we were kids. You've always treated me like a kid, bossing me around. And now you're a boss of this pile of, Kaneda says, and now you're a boss of this pile of rubble. And Tetsuo starts to do some of his power stuff. And Kaneda fires from the hip. And Tetsuo blocks it but gets knocked down. And it's like, you know what this makes me think of in a totally bizarre way is Dark Knight Returns. This is Batman fighting Superman. You know what I mean? There's this super powerful person that is totally unstoppable.
Right.
And yet there's this completely not powered person with some technology and some smarts that actually kind of goes toe-to-toe with him a little bit. And again, that music starts. Kaneda fires. There's lots of wreckage. Kaneda hits the ground. Tetsuo struggles to his feet. Kei is crawling out of that crater. And Kaneda, foolish. By the way, there's a lot of jokes about Kaneda.
Oh,
yeah.
Tetsuo.
Well, because that freaking streamlined dub. The first one.
Oh, yeah. It just gets real ridiculous. Tetsuo hears where Kaneda is, and he fires. I love that he fires through the wall, and the smoke clears, and that shot goes right through Tetsuo's chest.
Yep. Gotcha!
Tetsuo looks down. He ain't dead. This did not work. He goes to fire again. Battery's dead.
Right.
And he's like, it ain't fair, Tetsuo. Fight with your bare hands.
Oh, I know. Like, come on, dude.
Feeling frustrated, Kaneda? Now do you understand how it feels being little and helpless?
And just as he's saying this strange light begins to surround him.
Oh, yeah.
And it coalesces. And I think at first you kind of go, oh, he's using some crazy powers that he's going to wipe out. And then you go, and then Tetsuo notices the light. And that's when I think you go, soul.
Yep.
And then that laser beam just focuses in on him from space. And there's a scream and a huge, huge explosion. And the Colonel's going, did we get him? And we don't know. We're going to shoot him again. And we see the satellite, changing angle to get the shot right. And rubble moves, and there's Tetsuo. And he looks down. He's missing an arm.
Yep.
And he screams, and Kaneda lifts up a giant rock and yells at Tetsuo. Why do you yell at him before you're going to kill him with the giant rock?
Yeah.
These are foolish things. And the light is kind of coalescing again, and Tetsuo flying straight up, super fast, to space.
Yeah, man.
The shots of him landing on the satellite and walking up the satellite are so cool. Yeah, it just looks amazing. And he destroys the satellite.
Yep.
And in the control room, all the stuff shorts out. And then we see these weird beams coming down from space that are so cool looking. And Kay and Kaneda are running away from them. Kai, who's with the other gang members, has showed up with the bike. One of the beams is coming behind him, and they crash just as it dissipates. And in space, the satellite is totally destroyed. And now the doctor looks over at that little matrix thing, and it is, he says, magnificent.
Yeah.
Because he's digging whatever weird shit is happening.
Yeah, mad scientist. He
Totally.
doesn't care about death and destruction if it means scientific progress.
Tetsuo needs a new arm.
Yeah, so he just makes himself one.
So he makes himself one. And we're starting to worry about his power and what's happening with it at this moment. The Colonel talks to the doctor, and the doctor, I'll say he's basically got a hard on for whatever is happening here. And the Colonel's going, no, this is a problem. By the way, there's one line that the Colonel says, and I think I skipped it, and I can't remember where it is, but it's a line that really sums up his character for me, was he kind of goes, you scientists have to figure out good and evil, truth and bad.
Oh, yes.
I'm a soldier. All I have to decide is whether to act or not.
Yes. I remember
that is
quote.
A great
really,
line.
really great.
Kai and Kaneda are working on the bikes. And we're using Kai's bike to power up the battery
for Kaneda's
gun. And it blows up the bike.
Yeah.
And Kaneda's like, it's just a bike. Why are you worried about it? He's like, well, let's use your bike.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Have
your bike's still on fire. Your bike's still on fire.
Yeah.
Later, we're in the stadium. It's partially destroyed. There's essentially a throne.
Yes.
Kaori shows up, walks up to the throne, sees the jars, and hears screaming, and there's Tetsuo.
Yeah.
And the Colonel is there too with a gun.
Yes.
And we're getting right to it. And Cairo is asking why everyone is calling him Akira. And then she notices his arm, which he covers. And I love, he goes, it's no big deal. And he's got his arm resting on, the stone of the throne.
Yes.
And then metal tentacles attach itself to the throne and starts to crush the stone.
Yeah.
And she's going, are you okay?
Right.
And the Colonel shows up and is like, look, I'll give you the drugs and you can come with me.
Yep.
It's all going to be cool.
Right, because he wants Kaori to go get the drugs for him.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, because he keeps telling her, he's like, I need you to go get these drugs for me.
Yeah.
And then the Colonel shows up and is like, yo, I got what you need, but you need to cooperate with me. And he's like, ha ha ha, that's not gonna that's not gonna happen. Kaori, seriously, go get me those drugs.
Yeah. Colonel ends up, he kind of attacks the Colonel, knocks him down. The Colonel ends up shooting him.
Yeah.
Tetsuo gets up clearly with difficulty and hurt. And then we see out of his cape, his arm, which looked okay before, falls out of the cape, and it is...
It's not looking like a normal arm.
No, it's tentacly and big and bulbous.
Fleshy.
Slowly but surely in this scene turns into a giant meat baby.
Yeah, it is so... And then he reaches out to the Colonel with that giant crazy arm and engulfs him in fleshy gunkiness and is clearly squeezing him to death.
Yeah.
Tetsuo is about to kill him when laser hits.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that arm goes right back to Tetsuo's body. And there is again the hero push in on Kaneda with the gun on the bike.
Yep.
Looks awesome.
Yep.
Tetsuo flies up. Kaneda dodges with bike. Tetsuo hits the concrete, breaking it. Kaneda skids, fires, jumps off the concrete. Boulders are falling on him. He survives.
Yeah.
And then looks up, and there is Takashi floating down. And there are the other two. And they go towards the Akira jars. And Kaneda heads up to Tetsuo, firing while riding on his bike. And I think the form of this reminds me of the classic samurai archer riding on horseback, firing to the side.
Yes.
It has exactly that kind of form. Man, Kaneda's just a badass.
Yeah.
And Takashi lands, and they're kind of going, Akira is here. And the jars start to bubble, and Tetsuo starts to change.
Yeah.
Help! Kaneda, help, please!
And now he's calling out for help because his body is going out of control.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they kept warning him that he couldn't control the power, and it literally manifests in...
Listen, a lot of people have given me warnings over the years. I never would have expected anything to turn into a giant. I mean, what happens now? And again, I had to go back to 1989 or 90 when I'm watching the VHS with no subtitles in Japanese.
Oh my God.
And we get to this point in the movie, it's like, what is happening? Because the mutation, just fleshy grossness of what happens. And again, it's focused with Kaneda in focus in the background. And this huge, giant meat baby, as you said, growing in the background. And he calls out to Kaori, and then his foot with giant toes that then has little toes.
Extra fingers on all of the innards that make up this
It reaches
creature.
out and grabs her. And to me, this moment is he was afraid.
Yeah.
He needed her. But he couldn't control his body. So the manifestation of I need you was to grab her
and consume her,
suck
with
her into
his
the
body. Yep.
And Kaneda is engulfed.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with Kaneda, though, is that, I mean, he's been spending the whole movie trying to be like, no, Kaneda, I don't need you to save me anymore. I don't need anybody. Now I can do everything on my own. And
then when he gets in some
trouble, he realizes, no, I need help. Save me.
Yeah. And he's calling out to Kaori. He says he can feel her pain.
Yes.
And we see this blob growing, and Kaneda's inside, and Kaori's inside. And we see, and again, as you say, we see eyes and fingers.
Yeah.
And then Kaori gets squeezed and she dies.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It is awful.
Yeah,
right?
it's horrible.
It's an innocent death.
Yes.
Totally. We see like something growing in that Akira matrix that the doctor is looking at.
Yes.
And our three kids have sat down to kind of meditate almost right at the Akira jars, and the colonel is being grabbed, and what's so crazy is the thing that's grabbing him then sprouts teeth that look like they're going to bite him in half.
Yep.
The jars shatter. They're falling in slow motion. Takashi stands up as Tetsuo the blob is just engulfing now the kids and coming all over of them, and then there is a bright white light.
Yep.
And there is Akira.
Yep.
Akira.
And we fade to white.
Yeah.
The doctor screams. I really wonder what's happening with this simulation thing he's watching, because it seems like the power's almost there.
Yeah.
The colonel stumbles away, and Kyoko touches him, and he's gone. Yeah. She teleports him out of the city and says, get in the tunnel, you'll be safe there. And he looks back and sees the city, and there is that singularity, the same thing that we saw at the beginning. And as that black and white ball glows, Tetsuo shrinks back, and we see his face. And it's, again, total sympathy for him in this moment.
Yeah.
And I think as he's calling out to Kaneda for help and yelling, I think he's back to his right mind.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how it seems to me. He's not the megalomaniacal, mass-murdering Tetsuo. He is the kid who's scared. And Kaneda goes to help him. And he is being pulled into the singularity as well. And this is the thing. So Kaneda was trying to save him, trying to kill him, trying to save him.
Right.
You know? Takashi is saying, you got to get out of there. You're going to die. And they try to pull him out. And then some crazy Tetsuo hand grabs Kaneda. And now we have Takashi wants to help. And the other two kids are like, well, if we go in, we're not going to be strong enough to come back.
Yeah.
And they say, well, but if the three of us work together, maybe we could save Kaneda.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, it's this really nice moment with Takashi because he basically is like, oh, because the other kids don't want him to go.
Right.
And he goes, but none of this is his fault. And already and they kind of all then have this conversation where they're like, well, there's already been so much death and destruction because of this kid who couldn't control his powers and who was an awakened Akira.
Yeah.
But maybe at least we can save one person.
Yeah, and also Takashi, how did Takashi end up outside with that guy who's bleeding and happen to end up on that road to be hit by Tetsuo? Like, it's all not Tetsuo's fault at all. He just got sucked into this situation.
Yep.
And so they feel that sympathy. He wouldn't be in this situation if Takashi hadn't been out.
Yep.
So,
Wait. I have an important question.
Yep.
They say we have to save the boy. It's not his fault.
Right.
Which boy?
Tetsuo.
I thought it was Kaneda.
I've always thought it was Tetsuo. I never thought it was Kaneda. Because it's not.
I always thought it was Kaneda because I thought that it was that whole idea of, again, that there's already been all of this death and destruction. We can't undo any of that.
Right.
But at least, but basically the whole idea of one life is worth saving.
Well, and Takashi is saying Kaneda, stay away from there.
Right.
And then the next thing he says is we can save him.
Yeah.
So I always thought he was talking about Kaneda.
Okay.
But
also,
and I'm trying because I looked at both the subtitle and I listened to some of the dub. They both say the boy.
Yeah.
They don't say a name.
Yeah. And I think that there is a level of it being subject to interpretation, particularly given how the film ends.
Yeah.
So I see your perspective as well.
Yeah, and of course I get the Kaneda reference as well.
Yeah.
It feels like to me that's why they're going in to sacrifice themselves.
Well, there's no question that they're going in to sacrifice themselves to save somebody.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now we go into this world, and at first we see Tetsuo riding a motorcycle, and we hear Kaneda's voice giving him advice, which it sounds like maybe that was a significant moment, like the first time Tetsuo really learned to ride.
Right.
It was Kaneda as his mentor. And then we see a school, and Tetsuo is with a woman, and we're hearing kids' voices. We hear about, his mom and dad left him. And we don't know what that is. And Tetsuo is crying. And we hear Kaneda's voice. And he says, are these all your dreams or your memories?
Oh, wait!
And then Kaneda's like thrown out of this thing, and he's thrown towards some giant building that crumbles as he flies through it. And again, this is like said so many times, but it's all the little ideas that make a movie cool. I don't know what it means that he flies towards a building and it crumbles, but it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And you think about how much work that was from the animators to make this moment happen.
Yeah.
And it's worth it. And now we're at a bus, and kids are getting out of the bus and playing together, and there's a little girl and a little boy, and we see room 28, and we see Akira.
Yep.
And we see...
Yeah, who we know to be Akira because we've seen this exact Akira.
And he is, by the way, we
times.
should say, like the pristine, perfect child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what his design is. As opposed to everyone else we've seen, particularly our other numbered kids who look like little old people. Like Akira is beautiful. But right now we're seeing Takashi, Kyoto, and Masaru, but they're not the little old people. They look like kids. But they are recognizably themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And we see them using their powers and scientists observing them, and one of them blows up a TV, and we see Akira, and we hear...
Is this Akira?
Yes, we called him here to the three of us. He's going to take Tetsuo with him.
Take him where? Where?
And again, this is stuff like, I don't know what this means exactly. It's too much for Tetsuo, and the three of us for Akira too. And we see images of Kaneda spinning in space.
It's way too big for us, as we are now.
But someday, we ought to be able to...
Because it has already begun.
Your friend, she's...
And then we never finish that sentence.
Yeah.
And he says, my friend... K, you mean K.
Yes.
So this is like that's something.
Yep.
I don't know what it is. And it's silent, and Kaneda is floating, and he lands, and a little, again, that singularity appears and grows. And then we have young Tetsuo, and he's just been beat up.
Oh, yeah.
And there is Kaneda. And I love that he has a bloody nose because he just fought the guys that beat up Tetsuo.
Yep.
They're always like that with the new kids. Hey, you came today, right? They beat me up too. But the truth is, those guys are wimps.
And he introduces himself. And then he says, the truth is, I just got here myself.
Yeah.
So he got here yesterday and got beat up. And today he's beating them up.
Yep.
And by the way, I think those two guys are Yamagata and Kai. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it might be.
They've
just all been together since they were kids.
And then we hear, because he never finished the sentence, he says, my name is, and then we hear,
Kaneda. Kaneda. Kaneda.
Kay.
And Kay is waking him up, and he sits up, and there's a hard cut, and as he sits up, he turns, and we hear organ music, and behind them, all of Neo Tokyo is being destroyed. And it's that same dome look, just like at the beginning. The doctor in that control room says, "Oh, it's like the birth of a tiny universe."
Yeah.
And Kaneda screams, and he calls out to Kay, and that singularity collapses. The doctor in his lab watches it collapse, and it destroys his lab, killing him. And the city crumbles. And the footage is amazing.
Yeah.
I put this up with any destruction of any, in any movie. It looks great. And it's after.
Yeah.
And Kaneda is there, and Kai is there. Kaneda is there, and Kay is there. Mm-hmm. And Kai can't find Kaneda.
Yeah.
and Kaneda.
I really love Kai. Kai is
great character.
Really a sweet boy.
He is. For a member of a very violent gang.
Biker gang, yeah.
And Kaneda is kneeling, and he catches the tiny universe in his hands. Yep. And he closes his hands, and there's a flash, and he says, Tetsuo, and he cries.
Yep.
Kaneda, what is it?
Thank you.
Huh?
You called me, didn't you? And I heard you.
And then Kai finds the wrecked bike, thinks Kaneda's dead, freaking out, and then Kai shows up. He's so happy to have found Kaneda. And they ask about Tetsuo, and is he dead? And the answer is, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And there's the flash, and then this moment is so beautiful and weird, and I don't know what it is, but there's these lights coming down through and I don't know if they're saying this is just sun through the clouds or this is some after effect glow of the singularity, but it moves across the city, and we find out the Colonel is alive too.
Yeah.
And
because is Kyoko communicating with the Colonel at some point during all of this destruction?
Earlier
because she tells him to get in the tunnel where he'll be safe.
Yeah. And we're riding off on our wrecked bikes.
Yes, that scene is so funny.
And we pan up to the city, and what we hear is,
but someday we ought to be able to,
because it has already begun.
And we see that white light moving towards the screen, and then there's a red eye and wreckage, and we hear,
I am Tetsuo.
Credits.
That's not what
and I still go it's not that there are things. It's not that I am totally bewildered.
Yeah.
No.
But I also go well, okay, Mr. Otomo, how do you want me to feel?
Yeah.
Was this a good thing that happened? I mean, we had millions of people just died.
Right.
Right.
We had our somewhat godlike children escape into some other thing and talk about coming back.
Dimension?
Yeah.
I think we are to believe.
Kay may or may not have some sort of power and connection to them.
Yes.
Yeah. Tetsuo may or may not be dead and may or may not be insane and may or may not be powerful and dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know what Akira is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I come over that Tetsuo just changed now, and you know what he says at the end, right? He says, because this must all happen, or whatever he says, and I am Tetsuo. He is finally. It's also symbolic, right? I mean, you're a teenager trying to find out who you are, what your voice is, you know, who you are as a person, and he's going essentially through the worst puberty you could ever go through.
Oh my God!
And then by the end of it, he is, I am Tetsuo. This is finally me.
Yes,
right?
I'm now trying to think of the language, the way he uses language in the film, because obviously all the other guys in the biker gang, they all use ore, which is a very like masculine, like tough way of saying I. And in the end, he says boku wa Tetsuo.
Yeah.
So boku is like a young boy way of saying I.
Right.
So I think that your interpretation is along the lines of correct, which is this like freedom of like finally I am me.
The anger's gone.
Yeah, the anger's gone.
I am now softer. I understand now. The anger is. I've let it go.
You know what's just occurring to me, and I thank you very much for both of what you said, is that there's so much of birth and death and rebirth and rebirth again in this film.
Yeah.
Because you have the children who are old.
Yes.
You have Akira, who has died and will be reborn.
Yeah.
You have Tetsuo, who is a permanent child.
Yes.
You know, he's emotionally the youngest person in the film.
Right.
Who is then also going to have to be reborn. And you have the city that has been destroyed and is reborn and destroyed and we hope reborn again.
Yeah.
Like there is a kind of a sense of the violence and terror and confusion and chaos of life. And then, but I do feel somewhat hopeful, strangely enough, at the end of the movie. I think part of it is those lights that come down through the clouds.
Yeah.
You know, that
it's
kind of
dawn breaking.
Yeah, that there's something that's moving forward.
Yes.
But what's interesting about it to me is that it isn't moving forward in a way that anybody gets it. It's not like Kaneda has gone, I figured it out.
I got it. No.
Kaneda doesn't have anything. He's not a smart guy.
Right. No.
You know, maybe, I mean, Kay is a lot smarter than he is.
Yes.
But like there is no, this is life.
Yeah.
We are confused and bewildered and afraid.
Yes.
And we grow and we die and we move on, you know, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not taking comfort in it exactly. It's just that is what it is.
Yeah. It's taking comfort in the acceptance of that is what it is, but not being comforted by the fact that that is what it is. You know what? It's like taking comfort being like, well, we just can't control everything.
Well, yeah, and isn't that Eastern philosophy? It's you know, it's not about wanting to it is acceptance, not I need to understand it all from the and also the idea of there is no blame, right? Like so to talk about the difference between American and Japanese philosophy. Americans always look like, who's to blame for this? Japanese like, how do we fix it? And so the difference here in how they approach the culture. And so the anime here feels logical to the
how
Japanese.
How do we fix it? It's like
how do we fix it?
So perfectly encapsulates it.
Well, and what do you have battling with this? We have order in the face of the colonel.
Right.
We have chaos in the face of the biker gangs.
Right.
We have political people in the face of the terrorists. We have religious people in the face of the religious fanatics. And all of them are trying to impose their own worldview on this is what it should be. This is how we should behave. And of course, none of them are right.
No.
And the reality is Akira.
Right.
And he is coming and he is inevitable. And everything else will look small when compared to him, you know? A question. So just in terms of reception, it didn't make its money in Japan. It has eventually made its money.
It has.
As a cult film and one that is getting replayed. Because we have you here, one of the things we say at the beginning of every show is the influence it has on us today.
Yeah.
What is the influence in your mind of Akira on the world, both of anime, but also on American animation and cinema in general?
Well, I think that we have Akira to thank a lot for there being sort of this interest in bringing like Japanese animation into Western culture, because I think that this was one of those first films that really showed people, because again, I mean, the amount of money that they spent on this is about $1 billion. Like, I am not exaggerating. That's how much money this had. And so people, I think, went, oh, wow, like animation is such a legit medium. This isn't just something that is for telling whimsical stories for children, because it was one of those things where, you know, and the Japanese started doing animation because they were inspired by Western animation. They loved Western animation, so they went, we want to do that too. And then they just totally took it in a different direction. And I think it is largely to thank for the fact that there have been a lot of anime films that have gotten Western releases. I think, eventually you would have gotten some other films down the pipeline that would have gotten that attention. But this definitely sort of spearheaded the whole movement of anime being taken of anime, not only anime but animation in general being taken seriously as a genre within film, or as a medium within film. It's not a genre; it's a medium. This is this is
literally
sci-fi, cyberpunk horror.
That literally was what I was about to say.
Yeah.
We always give our final thoughts at the end of every episode, and my final thoughts was this was the movie, just as Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen when they came out in 1986 are what proved to me what made me understand that comic books are a medium.
Yeah. Yes.
They are not a genre. Is that comic books can be crap.
Yeah.
They can tell any different kind of story.
Totally.
And they can be fine art.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really seeing Akira that made me think that about animation.
Yeah.
And it's not that Disney didn't make all sorts of great animation.
Of course not.
But I didn't understand that animation can do this. And for me, the most important thing for me thinking about great films is attention to detail. Is that there's the detail, and this is why it was so problematic as I was writing my notes for this film, because every single shot is, almost every shot is a great shot and had an idea to it.
Yeah.
What if we're in slow motion? What if we're in a low angle? What if we're tracking with the bike? What if we have these light traces? What if we go into speed lines and lose our backgrounds?
Yeah.
What if we pull out the sound? What if we have these booms? What if we use percussion and all these things from traditional things and blend them with modern technological music and use that and layer it in these modules?
Yeah.
What if we have voices and choral performances that come in? What if we don't have clear moral choices? What in all of these what ifs, and then having all of these people, not just Katsushiro Otomo, but hundreds and hundreds of extremely talented craftsmen busting their asses to make all those ideas a reality.
Hundreds and hundreds of extremely talented craftsmen is a slight exaggeration of how many people actually worked on this movie. Yeah, the staff was shockingly small.
Wow.
I want to say maybe 100 people.
Wow.
I can't imagine. Because they're drawing every line, So much. John, what are your thoughts on Akira?
Mine are pretty simple. It's one of the most incredible experiences I ever had watching a film for the first time. It never goes away. The atmosphere, the emotion, and the philosophical stuff that's there for you to ruminate about. And I like that it doesn't give you a final answer.
Yeah.
I like that it leaves you thinking about everything, because that makes you want to come back and tackle it again and see if you can find something else in it. And there's something joyous in films that do that and are able to maintain your attention and able to maintain their rewatchability and potency for you as a film goer. So that's what I would say. And thank God it was made.
I've asked for how you think it influenced us. Do you have final thoughts on the film Akira?
On Akira, I mean, I think that what you said, John, just really resonates with me, is that whole idea of I really like that it is not resolved. I think that it's films like this, and that, again, it's a lot more common, I think, in more Eastern kind of storytelling, and they don't have the same concept of a 3-act structure that we do. And that whole idea of, well, of course it just ends, because stuff just ends in life and nothing is certain. So why would we have this very explained ending? And I think that this was one of the first films that really had that for me and made me such a fan of that kind of ending. I don't need every loose thread tied up. That's not how life is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. So that is what we think of Akira. Of course, we always want to hear what you think. Please visit us on our Facebook page. Do a search for the Cine-Files. You can leave your comments on iTunes and on YouTube. You can subscribe to us on Spotify and Stitcher. You can buy the film or stream it at cinephiles.net. And if you want to support the show, you can do it at patreon.com/thecine-files. If you want to reach me, you can do so at SR Morris. John, where can they reach you?
You can always reach me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And, of course, as I give you, please give us some love on the top 10. Give us some love on Geek Buddies as well, and come watch my stuff on Collider.
And Emma.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Emma.
Thanks for having
Such
me.
a delight
this was really
having you.
great. Yeah, it was fun to revisit this movie.
Oh, I'm glad. If people wanted to reach you on the interwebs, how would they go about doing that?
At Emma Fiffe, all over the internet, wherever Emma Fiffes are sold. That is me.
We'll go visit her, and I think that is it for this week. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files.